On a fateful winter's day in 2019, standing in front of the baked goods display of the Brandeis University C-store, I found myself at a moral crossroads. I was staring at this scrumptious-looking chocolate chip muffin, and it was making me feel things. And no, it's not because I was worried about the calories. I pride myself on being somebody who reliably goes for cake over cucumbers at any opportunity. No, something else about the muffin was leaving a pit in my stomach. It wasn't kosher. Well, what is kosher? And what about the muffin falling outside of that category left me feeling so contemplative on that fateful winter's day? Come, join me on a journey through time, back to my humble upbringings in the world of modern orthodox Jewry, where together we'll put my childhood under a microscope and find out why a verboten chocolate chip muffin provoked an epiphany in me that would change my life forever. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hot damn, he looks so much cuter when he's dressed up as a rabbi. Thank you. Between the years of 1998 and 2008, I was raised by my parents, Bonnie and Ed Weintraub, in the small but strong Orthodox Jewish community of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. They cared deeply about raising me with a lifestyle that was rooted in Jewish ritual traditions and customs. Along with my parents and two sisters, I observed the strict Jewish laws of kosher and Sabbath. We would cease all work from sundown on Friday until there were 3 stars out in the sky on Saturday night. We did not mix meat or dairy, but beyond that, only ate foods that were specially marked as kosher on their label. Now you might ask, was that limiting? Not at all. I loved growing up in Harrisburg. Keeping the Sabbath, or keeping Shabbat as I would call it, was then and remains today a highlight of my week. And believe it or not, keeping kosher wasn't that hard. In fact, most of the food at your local supermarket, aside from pork, lots of seafood, and the McDonald's next door to it, is kosher, and especially marked with symbols like these. You know how you don't eat expired food because it can make you sick? Well, if I had to put keeping kosher in layman's terms, I'd say that eating non-kosher, according to my upbringing, is comparable to eating expired food, but for your soul. So while most foods you see are kosher, things like mainstream marshmallows, for instance, are not because they have pig gelatin in them. If I had a bonfire with you, roasted one of those bad boys and popped it into my mouth, I could burst into flames. At least that's how I felt growing up, and even into my emerging adulthood. So while the muffin in the C-store was not Wilbur from Charlotte's Web and a wax paper baking cup per se, it was a close second because it was not in a wrapper, which meant that there was no guarantee it was made under kosher supervision, which meant that it wasn't kosher, which meant that if I took it out of the cabinet and had a bite of its forbidden fruit, I'd become instantly aware of my own nakedness and banished from the Garden of Eden, flanked by a storm of hellfire along with the inevitable scrutiny of God Almighty and my peers. Scary. I know. We all have Adam and Eve moments though, right? But when evil inclinations give us a call, I think we all know it better to just let the phone ring and ask Satan to please leave a message at the beep. And it was with such an attitude that I led my life after I left Harrisburg in 2008. I was almost 10 years old then, and in February of that year, my mother passed away after a long battle with breast cancer. And my dad had already passed away in 2003 from a brain tumor, so it would have been super irresponsible for the adults in my and my sister's lives to let us live on our own. Needless to say, we had to move. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you my dad died before my mom. I've been told more recently that it's traditional to present deaths in a chronological order, so my bad. Oh, also, I'm gay. Yeah, I forget that sometimes too. 3 years on from coming out, and I finally find that fact about myself a little boring. I mean, it always pales in comparison to when I come out to people as an orphan, so. And do not worry, not to worry, all of this information is relevant to my encounter with the muffin in the C-store. It all comes full circle in a super satisfying way, tied up in a neat little bow, so stick around. I don't just come out as gay and an orphan as a party trick. I do it to inform plot and character. Now, where are we? Yes. So at this point, I am 9 years old, gay, though not out of the closet yet, an orphan, and a modern Orthodox Jew, with the latter of those four things being the most serious of my conditions. Because after leaving Harrisburg, at which point I moved in to my aunt and uncle's house in Queens, New York, being an Orthodox Jew turned out to be a lot more than just rituals and traditions for me. Keeping Shabbat, keeping kosher, wearing a kipa. These were now what little I could do to keep the memory of my parents, and by extension, the love for Judaism that they'd instilled in me, alive. It was the most powerful memory I had left of them. To let go of any of it felt to me like I'd be retroactively letting go of my parents. This kipa that I just pointed to, well, first things first is called the kipa. It is traditional garb for Jews all across the gender spectrum and is traditionally worn during the performance of Jewish rituals, such as prayer services. However, in the Orthodox community, only men wear them, with rare exceptions, and we wear them all the time. And believe it or not, these little suckers can even be fashion statements. Indeed, kippas, like brassieres, come in all shapes, sizes, and colors that can be tailor-fit to their wearer's individual taste. But more than that, primarily, the kippa's function is to serve as a constant reminder of God's all-encompassing presence. God is always watching. God is with you when you walk. God is listening when you pray. He knows when you are sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows when you're lusting over non-kosher muffin, so you better watch your back if you want your sight to find the world to come, for heaven's sake. Don't worry. For me, I think that wearing a kippah is marginally more of a fashion statement than it is a means by which I religiously fearmonger myself, though I think it goes without saying that Mendel has a bit of a kosher complex. I never have enjoyed the luxurious anonymity of average muffin eaters, or as they are more commonly known, people. Because when you spend every day in public wearing a statement of your faith on your head, you become very conscious of how you behave in religious contexts and outside of them. For instance, when I eat a muffin, I'm not just some schmo eating a muffin. I am a Jew eating a muffin. And when I was looking at that chocolate chip muffin in the C-store that winter in 2019, on a day that saw the space filled with my fellow Orthodox Jews who felt like a jury of my peers, I was a Jew about to take a non-kosher muffin. Where I come from, Jews who take non-kosher muffins are designated as off the derech, or off the path. And you are either on the derech or you are off of it. It's very black and white. And for my adolescence, I felt very strange about myself because there were all these things going on in me that were not supposed to go on in a good Jewish boy walking straight on the path. I loved movies, which by many in my community were considered inappropriate and a waste of time. I had questions about my faith that were largely met with rebuke or altogether ignored. And finally, I found myself attracted to men, all while practicing Judaism in a discipline that interprets its founding text as unequivocally rejecting same-sex relationships. And knowing that all these things that felt so inherent to my being were unacceptable made me feel terribly uncomfortable in my own skin. I felt like a walking desecration of my community, going off the derech. Even worse, so I felt like I was desecrating my parents' memory in the process, and I didn't think I had anybody I could talk to about it. I wasn't myself. Every so often, I would let out a cry for help, consciously or not. Like in my high school yearbook, when my senior quote from the late, great Fred Rogers, pay no attention to the dolls in the picture, was, "The greatest gift you ever give is your honest self." So now that you have all that information, I'm sure you can start to piece together the thoughts and feelings that were going on in my mind when I came to the understanding inside that I really wanted to take that muffin. Like, I wanted it so bad. And at that point, I was almost 3 years out of the closet and figured I'd definitely done worse as far as the Jewish hierarchy of sin is concerned. But even as I considered that, and the muffin, I felt God's presence hovering over me. I began to worry that if my Jewish friends saw me take the muffin, they wouldn't just judge me, but they'd probably write home about it with a nice little letter along the lines of, "You wouldn't believe it, but I saw Mendel Weintraub take a non-kosher muffin, and I think he's off the derech now." I gave many a chocolate chip about what my fellow Jews thought of me. Why? Well, enter a sociologist by the name of Charles Horton Cooley. Now, I'm not saying all my insecurities back then are Cooley's fault. I'm just saying that Cooley came up with a theory that serves as a very good explanation for them. Two very different things. Now, in 1902, when he was teaching at the University of Michigan, Cooley published Human Nature and the Social Order. In it, he introduces his most famous sociological theory, the theory of the self, or the looking glass self. According to this theory, our self-perception is not so much a product of our self-consciousness, so much as our self-consciousness is a reflection of our internalized fantasies about how other people judge us. As Cooley puts it, we are afraid to seem evasive in the presence of a straightforward man, cowardly in the presence of a brave one, gross in the eyes of a refined one, and so on. And the psychological manifestation of the looking glass self is a three-step process that begins with 1, the imagination of our appearance to the other person, or self-perception, followed by 2, the imagination of his judgment of that appearance, or self-reflection, followed finally by 3, some sort of self-feeling, such as pride or mortification. Sound familiar? Of course it does, because Cooley's 3 steps are precisely what were running through my mind as I grappled with the prospect of taking a non-kosher muffin in the presence of my non-Jewish friends. Let's break it down. I was wearing a kipa, therefore appearing as an Orthodox Jew, so it must have been that I was judged by virtue of that fact alone. Self-perception. And with that in mind, my Jewish friends must have been thinking, "Oh my God, is he about to take a non-kosher muffin?" Self-reflection. And finally, my concept of their judgment sank in and pulled me down with it into an ocean of hellfire. Self-consciousness. But in the immortal words of my mother, Bonnie Weintraub, feelings are not facts. And my paranoid intuition that my friends were going to rat me out to the shtetl was completely baseless. My friends at Brandeis were then and still are some of the most fiercely supportive people in my life, and I know for a fact, and I say this with love, that they've all taken muffins of their own in their day. And as I realized that, I came to understand that the voice telling me I can't was not coming from outside. It was a self-sustaining force of negative energy that I had been feeding every day with conspiracies against myself. And with that part of me finally awakened, I could look at my reflection superimposed in the window between me and the contents of the pastry cabinet and realize, oh my God, my whole life has been a series of muffins. I told myself that I cannot love movies because I am Jewish. I told myself that I cannot be gay because I am Jewish. I told myself that I did not deserve love because I am Jewish. I told myself that I was desecrating my parents' memory by being the wrong kind of Jewish. I believed that I deserved nothing because of everything I am. I wasn't kosher. Feelings are not facts. Inside every one of us is a muffin taker trying to claw its way out for a chance to grab at the baked goods of opportunity that life presents in front of us every day. We believe that we are protecting ourselves from the pain that comes with the judgment of others when we don't go after the things we care about, but in doing so, we only cause ourselves more agony. People say this is some evolutionary trait, a means of instinctual survival. Fight or flight, right? When we don't go after the things we care about, that is not fight or flight. That is fight and flight. We are simultaneously fighting our inner voices and fleeing our greatest potential. Before we ever fight ourselves and flee ourselves, before we tell ourselves we aren't kosher, a muffin of the mind appears, begging us to take a bite. That is the first instinct, not to run away. Our default setting is not supposed to be I can't. We can make it I can. Now, I'm going to ask you for a moment of vulnerability. Close your eyes and ask yourself, what is the muffin in your life? Now, it could be any flavor, coffee, corn, whole wheat, or God forbid, bran. It could be that job you don't know if you should apply for. It could be that date you're not sure you should ask somebody out on. What does it taste like? I'll join you. For me, right now in this moment, my muffin is this TED Talk. I don't know who is going to see it once it's out in public, and it could be anybody. It could be people who reject the message I am trying to spread. It could be my grandparents who still don't know that I came out. But I'm standing here today because I believe in what I have to offer, and I know I'm going to be okay. What do you have to offer to yourself and to the world? Focus on that. You can open your eyes now, and through this short exercise, I hope you're able to realize one of two things. One, that you can take the muffin, and two, which I hope none of you noticed, is that your wallet is gone. I genuinely believe that the greatest gift we can ever give is our honest selves. And when you don't go after the things that you are passionate about, you are not just depriving yourself. You are depriving the world. As I have grown more in touch with my true self, I've become a better friend, a kinder brother, a stronger leader, and a few pounds heavier, because some muffins just have more calories than others. I wear my kipa every day, not only because I am proud to be Jewish, but because in doing so, I get to show the world, you, the rabbi from my high school who taught AP Psych that said homosexuality is comparable to cancer. I get to show the students in the closet who take his class to this day who believe that they are less than because of it. I get to show my younger self that there are Jews in the world who look like me. I stared at that muffin in the winter of 2019, and believe it or not, my whole life flashed before my eyes. But I was no longer merely telling myself that I wanted it. I told myself, Mendel, Weintraub, you owe it to yourself and the world to take that muffin, and you gotta swallow the whole damn thing. And I did. Thank you.